Hi, everybody. A very warm welcome to the second edition of this webinar in the IRMI webinar series. This session is brought to you by the DBT Wellcome Trust India Alliance as part of the India Research Management Initiative. So I'd just like to take a few minutes for a few housekeeping matters before we get into the session. This webinar is being recorded, so if any of your colleagues have missed out on today's session, they can always follow all the conversations because the recording will be uploaded on YouTube, on the India Alliance YouTube channel. You can ask questions, you can leave questions anytime during the webinar. You just need to type them into the question box, and we will try and answer those questions after the presentations are over. For any reason, if the webinar ends abruptly due to a technical glitch, please join back using the same registration link that you've used to join at this point. And we've had a lot of questions about e-certificates, so just a small point there that e-certificates will be provided at the end only to those who attend the entire workshop. So on that note, I'd just like to say a few things about IRMI, the India Research Management Initiative. This is a new initiative which was launched in 2019, and I'd like to talk through the strategic priorities for IRMI. So IRMI has a focus of strengthening the research ecosystems in India, and there are several different kinds of stakeholders who form part of this ecosystem. So our strategic priorities for IRMI include supporting research centers in India in strengthening research management services available to their researchers. The second priority is supporting training, career development, and networking opportunities for research managers and administrators. The third priority is building national and international partnerships for knowledge and resource exchange in the field of research management. And the fourth priority is creating a community of practice for research management in India. And you can read more about the IRMI strategic priorities on the India Alliance website. And if any individuals or institutions would like to engage with the IRMI initiative, there are registration forms available on the IRMI site on the India Alliance website. So please complete those registration forms. And on that note, it's wonderful to introduce the second edition of the webinar series, which is going to be focused on developing and managing international partnerships in research. International partnerships in research can provide immense opportunities for researchers from all across the globe to come together to address problems whose solutions could potentially have global impact. And this needs several different stakeholders to pull together. In addition to the researchers, it also needs their respective institutions and various funders to work together to facilitate these programs. And from the point of view of the researcher themselves, it's working in an international collaboration is quite different from working in isolation or working with colleagues in the same institution, because it might also involve additional administrative steps, such as navigating different financial systems across countries. And certainly international collaborations also entail understanding and working across different cultures. So a lot of institutions choose to support their researchers in different ways to facilitate such collaborative activities. And for today's edition of the webinar, we bring together three professionals representing different stakeholders within this ecosystem. So it's a pleasure to welcome Janaka Pushpanathan from the British Council, South India today, and Dr. Naresh Sharma, who's the head of international relations at IISER Pune. And it's wonderful to have Professor Colin Robinson from the University of Kent in the UK joining us. And through their different perspectives, we're going to view developing and managing international partnerships in research through the eyes of funders, institutional support staff, and researchers themselves. So on that note, I invite Janaka to share a few thoughts with us about the work the British Council has been doing in furthering Indo-UK collaborations. Over to you, Janaka.
I think I needed to be unmuted. Yeah, thank you so much. Good morning and good afternoon, good evening to all viewers watching from everywhere. Thank you, Savita, for that really helpful introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here on this webinar series of IRMI to talk a little bit about the UK-India collaboration, and also I think about what the British Council does in order to facilitate some of these collaborations across India and the UK. So many of you may be familiar with British Council, but really a quick word on who we are and what we do. We are a cultural relations organization, and we work in three very broad areas: English, which includes teaching and the libraries, and also examinations. And we work in the arts and culture space, as well as in education, which includes research and innovation, and also sort of, helping Indo-UK collaborative ties to improve quality of education and to benefit from both the countries' shared knowledge economies, if you will. And we have a lot of digital resources which are used by millions of young people around the world, and we'd invite the audience as well to sort of partake in some of those resources as well. So that's broadly what we do, and you'll find more information on our website. And there's also a lot of focused information on studying in the UK. So we have an entire section on international education services, which then gives students, professionals, young professionals, as well as universities, systems both in the UK and India, access to current and latest information that we put out there in terms of market insight, in terms of, if you would like to go and study in the UK or do engage in research or professional activity in the UK or India. So that's broadly what we do. And in terms of higher education, and because this webinar is about exploring opportunities in research and research funding and collaboration, I'm going to talk very briefly about our work in higher education. Interestingly, our priorities are also aligned with the new education policy, which is recently the draft format we all saw and is yet to be announced formally. But I think the big three priorities for us are quality, leadership, and obviously leading to employability. And so we've always sort of helped build that capacity in faculty, research, and leadership. We also promote and support academic partnerships. And I know there's already been a couple of questions on individual academic collaborations with universities in India and the UK. Yes, we facilitate that. And mobility, of course, being a huge part of what we do in terms of both faculty as well as students. We're not only looking at outward mobility of Indian students to the UK, we're also looking at students from the UK coming to study in India. And I think the Study in India program took off pre-COVID, and we are hoping that once the environment is conducive, we'd be able to actually have student exchange programs as well. And gender is at the heart of everything that we do. So there's a big thrust and focus on women and girls. And there are lots of programs that we have done in the past and are also doing currently that encourage gender equal participation across all of our work that we do. And I think this is the crux of the webinar, to talk about what opportunities there may be in terms of funds accessible to young researchers or sort of people who want to engage in research in another country, to be able to further their research ambitions. And I think many of you may already be familiar with this big bilateral partnership that we have with the Indian government. It's called the UK-India Education and Research Initiative. It's called UKERI. We have the Newton Baba Fund Program, which is managed by BEIS. And of course, a lot of scholarship opportunities, not just the British Council scholarship, but I think a multitude of scholarships which are present that are awarded by UK government as well, which we'll come to in a bit. But really quickly to take you through what UKERI is. I think it was initially in 2006 when the program began, and I think all of the data is already on the slide. I'm not going to go too much into detail, but I think the big three things that we've been able to do with the help of UKERI is, I think, establish that very robust framework to create that step change, which is a much needed thing in higher education. And just to give you a little bit of context, I think so far under UKERI, there have been 1,057 academic partnerships, 2,000 research publications. And we heard Savita talk earlier about the quality of research publications when you work in isolation and when you work in collaboration. UKD has actually demonstrated that time and again with collaborative research. The quality of the research and the research paper is multifold, and it's also very credible. So I think the key here is also to sort of develop programs which are of mutual interest and strategic importance between India and the UK, and we've been doing this since 2006 for almost now 15 years, 14 years, yeah. So that gives you this slide gives you an overall picture of how UKD has sort of gone from one phase to the other. And I think the focus on institutional and individual partnerships is very high, especially institutional, because we believe that this will then strengthen not just the research components, but also the research leadership in both countries. And now we are in the phase 3. Next year we end phase 3, and I think the big focus has been on these 3 areas. Research, innovation, and partnerships has been at a big thrust in all of the work that we've done, and we worked across 2 strands, one in education and training, and the second strand in research and innovation, and obviously skill development in higher education. So if you look at how phase 3 is panned out, we've been able to reach and influence 600 academic leaders from technical higher education institutions. And again, in terms of proposals, I think 60 proposals under the scheme of promotion of academic and research collaboration. So this is, as you know, this is a bilateral agreement between both the governments and a lot of consortium partners who are involved in UKD, and of course, research partners as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about education and training and what we do under that area. So a lot of faculty development programs. So those of you who are watching who belong to, who lead academic roles in institutions, there's a huge opportunity here because there is, that funding and access to thought leadership, especially with respect to academic leadership, also education management programs for higher education institutions. And these are then supported by various Indian bodies as well as obviously the UKD funding that's available. And again, we spoke about faculty development programs, and for more information, there is ukd.org, which you can go and dip into for more information on specific sort of funding opportunities. In research and innovation, I think the big areas of collaboration have been mutually strategic areas. So we're looking at not just knowledge sharing, but also knowledge transfer. We're also looking at researchers from both countries, India and UK, coming together and developing projects on mutual interest and stuff like that. And there's a whole range of projects that we've done in various areas across, from 2006 until 2021. In spanning various fields as well. So that gives you a sort of broad area in terms of the numbers of states that we work in India. So pretty much across the country. And also I think in terms of, especially I think over the last few years, cyber security, artificial intelligence, robotics, machine learning, waste management, environmental sciences, I think those are big sort of areas where we've been able to work constructively in. And there's also SPARK, which is the Scheme for Promotion for Academic and Research Collaboration. So
Janaka, sorry, a minute left.
Yeah. Sorry, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, sure. Sorry. Okay. So the impact, I think in terms of impact that is created, there's a whole lot of impact, but I think some of these are really interesting in terms of robotic efficiency in warehousing environment. So I think that was a very, very interesting project that happened. And also in terms of astrophysics, as well as in terms of eco-friendly processes to recycle waste, printed circuit boards to recover valuable metals. I think each of these projects then bring, sort of fresh perspective into how researchers are approaching certain research topics which are very critical and topical to this era that we live in. And I think the monitoring fetal movements wearable sensor system, that was another hugely successful project as well. So in terms of creating impact. And then we quickly, I'm also conscious of time. I'm kind of going to go through a little bit quick, but then if you have questions, we can always come back to some of these in greater detail. The Newton Fund program is the one that I told you. It's managed by BEIS, which is Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, called BASE. In terms of funding, the funding has doubled from 2014. Initially, it was 3 million. Now it is, initially it was I think initially we had a 3 million fund, and then the total UK government investment up to 2021 has been since 2014 up, I think, about 700 odd million. And also, I think in terms of what it tries to do, so the British Council is involved in the people side of things, so I'll come to that in a bit. It promotes economic development and social welfare, and again, research and innovation being a very, very important part of what the program does. So that's overall the sort of landscape of the Newton Baba. And I think the key data from this slide is over 130 institutions and from India, and about 64 UK institutions are able to partner with each other, benefiting about 3,500 researchers, faculty and scientists. And primarily builds research and innovation partnerships. And like I said earlier, the British Council is involved in the people pillar of the strand, which is international fellowships. You may have heard about the PhD placements already. And in light of the PhD placements, you already know that the UK government has already sort of revised its visa guidelines for and GIR for PhD students who are there in the UK already. And of course, the Researcher Links workshops. I think a lot of Indian institutions have partnered with UK institutions on the Researcher Links workshops, and the British Council has facilitated many such workshops and partnerships as well. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds on this. I think very interestingly, if you look at PhD placements, it's distributed fairly across India, with North obviously contributing 33%. And if you look at the numbers of partnerships, we have about 144 HE institutions from South India who've been engaged both in the UKD program and some of the Newton Baba placement programs as well. And there are a lot of examples which you'll again find on our website, but and if there's time at the end, we can come back to some of the specific Newton Baba studies which have, like for example, I have specific examples on primary development and promoting socio-economic development. So there have been partnerships on that. There have also been funding given to researchers who are looking at very niche areas in their work, from Cochin, from Trivandrum, from various parts of South India as well. So we can always sort of do that. And in terms of the UK, a lot of it comes from the Russell Group, which is which are the sort of you could say similar to the Ivy League in the US perhaps, but I think now it's being spread across several other institutions which have immense research capability and research and innovation capacity. So I think it's now getting spread across a wide variety of institutions and not restricted just to the Russell Group ones. So there are many stories like this, but I think the one thing that is running common through all of these stories is, I think, how scientists and researchers are motivated to then look beyond the sort of, the aspect of the project, but look at it in terms of social impact, economic impact, and also, I think, driving their own personal impact in terms of how to then make this bigger, bolder, better. So I think that's the sort of big storyline that runs across all of our scholars, what they tell us, saying that the fellowship had an immense impact on their own way that they were looking at things, their own perspectives, and how it widened that perspective in order to be able to deliver a very superior sort of, project or an invention or research paper or, whatever. Scholarships, and I think while the British Council itself facilitates a number of scholarships, like the Grey Scholarships. So, for example, we've had from 2016, I think almost 250 scholarships handed to students who are pursuing a master's degree program. And again, a very wide variety of subjects ranging from liberal arts to STEM, to a lot of now. I think the last cohort, we saw a lot of people opting for robotics and artificial intelligence and big data and stuff like that. And the Commonwealth scholarships, again, all of these details available on our website, as well as the Hornby scholarships. The British Council 70th anniversary scholarships, which we ran for 2 years, is very, very special because it actually allowed a huge opportunity for women, students. It was a scholarship just for women to be able to go and pursue a fully funded master's program in the UK. So we've had quite a number of successful applicants. We've had some fantastic stories. We're putting together a small report on the returnee scholars, and I think by the end of this year we should have something like a really solid sort of storybook type of thing to put out to like a report which we can share. But I think that's been very it's been in the heart of what we do. So it I think we've had some very, very good stories from scholars who've said that had it not been for the scholarship, they might not have been able to sort of look at a sort of very valuable outing in the UK, but also I think taking that value from India, going to the UK, and then having that shared unique experience. So that's something that's very close to our heart. And I'm going to end there, and I'm hoping that I've ended on time. And those are some of the, our website links and other places where you can get more information. And I'm happy at the end to take questions as well. Thanks, Savita.
Thank you so much, Janaka. And it's quite impressive to have these funding opportunities for researchers at different stages of their careers, of course, coming from all across India and the UK. On that note, I'll request our next speaker, Naresh Sharma, to come on. So Naresh is actually the head of international relations at IISER Pune. And he's going to provide a different perspective on developing and managing international partnerships, again, going across the spectrum from individual to institutional partnerships. Over to you, Naresh. I think we need to.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, thank you, Savita. And thanks to India Alliance as well for the IRMI initiative. It's quite a great initiative which provides a good platform for research administrators and scientific research managers and scientific administrators to network, and also the support and enabling them as it is an upcoming niche in India. So with that note, it's a good opportunity for me to share my experiences in an education institute, academic environment. I did my PhD and postdoc in vaccine development and diagnosis of intracellular pathogen like Mycobacterium tuberculosis. And at that juncture, when you decide for a future career pathway, I decided to shift gears and move into scientific administration. The main driving force was that in India, I hadn't seen this kind of support structure, the research support structure, which facilitates and enables the researchers and scientific environment ecosystem to develop collaborations in their pre-award, post-award management, and other related activities. Whereas this support structure in Western countries have been quite instrumental in their growth and strong scientific environment over there. So with that, I got an opportunity to work as a grants advisor with Wellcome Trust India Alliance, and I worked there for 3 years, and after that moved into an academic system of IISER Pune, which was a 6-year-old new organization coming up, and I joined as an academic advisor, and then I've been working here in various capacities, and now as a head international relations, assisting the dean in managing and coordinating the international relations activities. So a brief few slides on IISER Pune. As many of you may be aware that IISER Pune was established in 2006 with a mission to integrate science education and research. And the scientists over here, they work on the cutting edge frontiers of the science, as well as teaching the undergraduates. So we have 3 academic programs, the flagship being the BSMS dual degree program, where students join us after 12th grade, and they work through their bachelor's and master's at the end of 5-year graduate with both the degrees together. The second being integrated PhD, where students join us after their bachelor's for a master's and a PhD degree, and a standalone PhD program. The national and international rankings speak about the quality of education and teaching that is being conducted at IISA Pune. We are being ranked 25 in the national NIRF India rankings 2020, as well as on the basis of the publications, Nature Index 2019 ranked us 20 in the list of young universities across the globe. Now, the research ecosystem at IISA Pune. So for teaching purposes, we do have physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics as a standalone departments. However, the research is very much interdisciplinary. The faculty members, they collaborate internally as well as outside and to address the global problems in a much more multidisciplinary manner. We have certain centers of excellence, as well as IISA Pune is a member of large research organizations like CERN or LIGO India, International Mouse Phenotyping Consortium, which puts IISA Pune in the league of the 20 major mouse phenotyping groups across the world. As per research outcomes, again, the faculty has been quite prolific in publishing almost 2,200 publications since the conception of the institute. We have filed 25 patents, and 3 have been granted to us. Faculty members are involved in consultancies. We are having partnerships with industries, collaborations with the clinicians, and IISA Pune faculty members are quite competitive in securing the research fundings, whether nationally or internationally, for their research. Internationalization at IISA Pune, it is an integral part of almost all the endeavors that we do, all the different strands of the institute, taken from education to research to capacity building, as well as the cultural engagement. Working with different partners, with different stakeholders, the cultural angle also comes into the picture. So internationalization efforts over here do sensitize the internal staff about the different cultural aspects with different partners and organizations. Now, the major question about which the topic is in terms of partnerships, whether national or international. So international partnerships, why do we develop international partnerships? So as mentioned by Janaka as well as Savita, so the global problems these days are not where you can sit in isolation, just work and address them. They are bigger problems, whether it is climate change or pollution or COVID as of now, most current challenge that we are facing. So there you need multidisciplinary, multi-partner and multinational approach, so that everyone can bring their expertise together on the platform, and then they can address the issues to come up with the most efficient solutions for these things. But then the reasons can also be very context driven in respect of the each and every institute and organization. Some may go for branding, and that's why they want partnerships. Some may go to meet international standards. For IISA Pune, it is more about the research collaboration, which is very core mandate of the institute, and teaching. So teaching quality, enhancing the research, getting the best student and the best talent, whether it is in a strategic area, in a very hot area of the research, or for teaching and getting the courses. So that is the driving factor for international partnerships across. We club or group research collaborations into 3 major. These can be individual driven, where it is the research area where the individual faculty member is working and they find a mutual interest with their potential partner and they want to work together. That is, the international office will still facilitate them, will support them with respect to the opportunities and all, but it is primarily driven by the individual faculty member and their own research interest. These research interests and their research areas, their expertise also benefit the institute in terms of the collaborations by making the institute a member of a bigger consortia or a consortium driven research, for example, LIGO India, or it is the CERN Large Hadron Collider research. Then there is a group of research collaborations which can be driven by the department or a particular thematic. It can be, let's say, energy research, or it is in synthetic chemistry, synthetic or materials physics and materials chemistry, like that. So a group of departmental faculty members coming together, and they are partnering and collaborating with the different departments across the globe, can be grouped as a research collaboration. And the international office does facilitate and help in negotiating the agreements and MOUs in these kind of situations, and provides a strong support structure for the success of these departmental collaborations. At the institutional level, then it would be the collaborations which are running in various multi-strands. It can be education, it can be teaching, pedagogy, teacher training. Apart from their own research, setting up new departments and identifying strategic areas and collaborating with different stakeholders to develop those strategic areas. So at the institutional level, some of the research collaborations are grouped under the institutional mechanisms. So a view of past. In past, when I had joined 2012, IISER Pune, most of the interactions and partnerships were very ad hoc, individual faculty member driven. They were decentralized. The processes were very case-to-case handling. And then the dissemination of information was not balanced. Any new agreement that might have taken place, maybe not all the faculty members or the students would be aware of it. How does it benefit them? What are the opportunities available? And that's how in 2014, with that time leadership, we decided to set up the International Relations Office with the aim and goal to centralize all these processes together and provide a one window solution as an interface between the IISER Pune and the international and global partners approaching IISER Pune for partnerships. We build IISER Pune as a global educational and research brand, provide more opportunities for our students for carrying out their research or take educational opportunities abroad, opportunities for our faculty members to collaborate and develop and enhance their own research areas, as well as expand the collaboration network, and then obviously compete for more international collaborative funding in the domain of research and education. The current structure of the office is that it is headed by the institute is headed by the director, and the office is headed by Dean International Relations, who reports to the director. Dean International Relations and Outreach is advised by the Apex Committee, which is, again, Apex Committee is headed by director. It constitutes members at head of the departments, as well as all the other deans, Dean of Faculty, Dean of Research and Development, Dean Academics and all, as well as Dean International Relations and Outreach. And this committee advises on the strategic areas, on the policies, on the procedures that are required for developing partnerships and joint academic programs. Dean International Relations is supported by Associate Dean of International Relations and Outreach, and I, by myself, in the capacity of Head International Relations, for coordinating all the activities and implementing the policies that are being decided by the top leadership at the ground level, working with the partners and interfacing with them. We manage the partnerships by providing organizational structures for taking decisions, providing clear communication channels, sharing the information, disseminating the information that comes across, negotiating MOUs with the partners, sharing our research experiences and information with the promoting the interactions between the faculty members and the potential partners, providing quality assurance, taking a review of the partnerships timely, what are working, what are not working, what are the imbalances, how to balance it out, and then managing and meeting the expectations, what are the financial arrangements and the commitments, doing a sustainability check, and not all partnerships are sustainable. Some of them or a few of them will end, and we have to accept it and we move ahead with that. International Relations Office, a dedicated office, does bring a value addition to the structures, to the research partnerships and research collaborations. It aligns the expectation partnerships with the vision and mandate of the institution. It explored the opportunities and the strategic areas of the institute's vision, and then develop programs and networks in that domain. It collate and disseminate the information on the funding opportunities. It explored the potential opportunities for the students as well as the faculty members with respect to what are the requirements and different other stakeholders. It evaluates and conducts strength, weakness and opportunity analysis for existing and potential partners, and also does a sustainability and suggests sustainability options and different activities under that umbrella.
Naresh, 1 minute left, please.
Thank you. Yeah, so some of the I would like to address some of the success stories, like ISA CNRS Joint Research Program. This is last year addition to the list, where ISA Pune and CNRS have added the funds together in a single pot of money, and the faculty members from ISA Pune and from CNRS across France, they apply, they first make their own network, and then they apply and write a joint proposal for applying for the funds here. ISA Pune provides mobility money to the Indian student, and CNRS in France will provide a fellowship to the PhD student who will be recruited on the French side on this to work on this joint project, and also the mobility money for the faculty member to visit India. This has been quite successful program. Last year we funded 2 out of 22 proposals that we had received. With Temple University, there is an existing collaboration between at the departmental level between the chemistry faculty members on both sides, and this collaboration has been fundamental in developing a dual master's doctorate degree program, where our student who in the 5th year will carry out a MS thesis project at Temple University for a year, and this 1-year project will work towards the master's degree completion at ISA Pune, but also towards the 1st year PhD thesis program at Temple University. Then with Göttingen University, Glasgow, we have funded we are partnering in the Erasmus Plus funded projects as well as DAD mobility projects which supports the faculty and student exchanges, and these have been quite instrumental in developing very specific research programs and research between the individual faculty members. The Max Planck agreement is Pan Max Planck Institute and Pan ICERs, the 5 of the ICERs, the older ICERs together, where we have been hosting at least 3 Max Planck research centers, one in gravitation research, and the second in carbohydrate research, and the third, which is ongoing, in chemical ecology. And similarly, we have a Pan ICER and a Pan ENS network level agreement with ENS group of institutes in France, again supporting the collaborative research between the faculty members, and also to explore new collaborations, the faculty and student exchanges. But none of the initiatives are without their own challenges. The challenges for international offices are the finances, the first and the foremost, where you need a dedicated budget to be committed for the activities to support, whether it is hosting delegations, whether it is providing travel support to the students incoming or outgoing, or either way, or providing some kind of support in terms which will sustain the research collaborations between 2 partners. There are administrative challenges in terms of redefining the processes and centralizing the information, or requesting the faculty and the students to share their information when if they are traveling abroad, if they are visiting any of the partners, or where the students are planning to visit and carry out their summer internships or research internships. Apart from that, the visa, taxation, or banking issues with respect to the incoming students or incoming faculty members who will be spending time in India in ISA Pune. And then the quality assurance, you will have to take hard decisions sometimes with respect to certain imbalanced partnerships, and do a assessment whether it is worthwhile investing on them or to draw a line someplace and then take it up later in time. And also the human
Naresh, I
resources.
think we'll have to stop there soon. So yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
Sure, no
Yeah.
problems. Thanks.
Sorry,
That
we just.
was anyway the last slide. And here we have the contact details if anyone wishes to contact us, and the social media handles. Thank you.
Thank you
Savita,
very
over to
much for
you.
your talk, Naresh. It was really nice to see what an international office can do for a research institution like ISL Pune. And on that note, I invite the final speaker for this afternoon, Professor Colin Robinson from the University of Kent. And Professor Robinson is going to tell us about a very large collaborative program that he currently heads and his experiences in working across different countries and different cultures. Over to you, Colin.
It's really nice to be here, and I'd like to thank you for the invitation. Since time is pressing a little bit, I'll try and move on fairly quickly, but if anyone's got any questions, of course, at the end. So this is an international project on the production of biotherapeutics and animal vaccines. And the partners are shown at the bottom. It's the University of Kent, where I'm based, Biotech, a government research institute in Bangkok, KMUTT, a university in Bangkok, Imperial College London, UCL, and London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. So it's a complicated inter-institution program. Next slide, please. And it's funded by the Global Challenges Research Fund, GCRF. So in case you don't know what this is, it's a £1.5 billion UK government research fund to enhance research in partner countries on the DAC list. And the DAC list basically means low and middle income countries as defined by the British government. So it's a very large, and in fact, it's a unique program. I've never seen anything like it in the UK. The impact has to be overseas, and it has to address United Nations Strategic Development Goals, SDGs. I'll come on to this later. And our project involves capacity building in both academic institutions in Southeast Asia and industry. And our particular project is a £4.9 million grant to produce pig animal vaccines and human biopharmaceuticals in Thailand and elsewhere in Southeast Asia. But it funds 2 Thai centers. And it employs UK expertise in recombinant protein production for animal vaccines, biopharmaceuticals. The UK teams have got a lot of experience in working together and with industry in the UK, and we've been involved in EU projects. This is a very new experience for us working with groups in Southeast Asia. And it's, as I said, there's a lot of things that we're doing really for the first time here. Next slide, please. Why biopharmaceuticals? It's incredibly difficult to produce recombinant proteins. Complicated recombinant proteins are low cost and in the purity required for a human medicine. And this is a picture of the crystal structure of a human drug, a monoclonal antibody. This is very high-tech work. Next slide, please. Why animal vaccines? Because there is a huge pig farming industry in Thailand and in Vietnam and elsewhere in that region. They have major problems with viral epidemics, and they desperately need to use animal vaccines. Thailand currently imports all of its animal vaccines, and it wants to make its own. It wants to become at least partially self-sufficient. And this, for one reason for this, is that its viral strains are different from the viral strains used by the likes of Boehringer in Germany to combat European viral strains. Next slide, please. And I mentioned the SDGs. So we have the GCRF program is designed to target UN Sustainable Development Goals. So the vaccine, for example, the vaccine element is aimed at reducing massive farms in pig farms. This addresses SDGs 1 and 2, which are associated with poverty and hunger. The biopharmaceuticals is aimed at improving health, prospects, that's SDG 3. In general, we're trying to enhance the biotech industry in Thailand, and this is addressing SDG 9, which is associated with infrastructure. Next slide, please. And why this particular consortium? This is a picture of the outside of the National Biopharmaceutical Facility in Bangkok, designed to produce both biopharmaceuticals and animal vaccines, and it's recently commissioned. So this is it's really getting up to speed now. So this is a perfect opportunity to apply UK expertise to basically help them kickstart this process. And we in Kent had a track record of student exchanges and loose collaborations with Biotech, the main partner in this venture in Thailand. And so once the GCRF program was announced, that I realized that it was an opportunity to develop strong research links with these. And I made 2 trips to Biotech before we submitted the grant application to really try and define the program. And I think this was essential in getting it funded. Next slide, please. So overall, we've got a lot of partners in this with different areas of expertise, and we're trying to enhance every step of the so-called value chain. On the left, we've got the upstream processing, the design of the process, the cell line construction, all the way through to downstream processing and even manufacturing development. We're trying to put expertise into all of these areas so that we can help design processes that are actually going to work in Thailand. Next slide, please. And this is the picture of the consortium. Basically, as you can see, there's a lot of groups involved in here. There's a lot of research assistants employed on this project, and it is very interesting. It's challenging to manage, but it's a real pleasure because these pretty much, in fact, everybody involved in this project is very good at what they do. So it's a question of trying to coordinate these activities above all else. Next slide, please. So let's talk about what was important both pre-award and post-award. Pre-award, what was important in getting this funding? We had to show that the impact was clearly targeted to the overseas partners. In other words, it's not just enhancing my CV with papers, grant, or whatever. The impact clearly had to be targeted overseas. The overseas partners had to be very good themselves. There's no point trying to enhance a group and a process that can't be enhanced. The UK team has to know the overseas partners. There's got to be a track record of collaboration. The British government is not going to give £4.9 million to a group that's never met in person, that has just met by email. This is a given. There has to be complementarity, and there has to be clear management experience. And several of the PIs in this project have managed complex international programs before. This was a clear factor in getting it funded. Next slide, please. What about research management support? In fact, this was critical, and Kent's got a very good research management support unit called Research Services. They help to publicize new grant programs early so that the PIs get sight of this and they can plan as soon as possible. They provided travel funds for me to visit the Thai PIs before the submission, and this was critical so we could get to know each other better and we could design the project properly. They managed the entire online grant submission in terms of costs, working out indirects, etc. And actually this was critical because all of these partners have different financial systems, and the grant system itself has different criteria and overhead levels, etc., for partners in the UK or overseas. So this was very complicated. I could never have managed this myself. Next slide, please. And running the project, what's needed? Well, a lot of travel is required. This is a time-consuming program in terms of management. I and others have had to do more traveling to expand the network because we want to show them we're not just doing what we said we would do, we're going to do even more. So international networking is a core criterion for success by which we'll be measured. We have to spread the word. You need a good project manager because there's a lot of detail that goes in the management, and you have to get off to a good start. And we made sure that we're all ready to go as soon as the grant started. Next slide, please. And post-award, another role for research management has been, research services has been to support it. So all of the financial reporting, the quarterly meetings, etc., we've had support for this. And they've also provided additional funds to host workshops in the UK and overseas. And this has been very good for impact. It's helped to maximize the impact of this project, but it's also helped us to meet new partners. And this, I would say, in terms of networking, has been a major success in this project. To give you some examples, next slide, please. The university provided part of their funds to host a showcase research workshop in Bangkok to bring together new stakeholders, so we could meet everybody that we could possibly meet involved in these areas: animal vaccines, biopharmaceuticals. And this was in a hotel in Bangkok, and these were the attendees from industry, from academia, from government ministries. Next slide, please. They also helped to fund a showcase event for VIPs at the British Embassy in Bangkok. And this was really good so that we can meet the stakeholders, the decision makers from government, heads of universities, heads of ministries, and this sort of thing. This was really very good in terms of getting the word out about what we do. Next slide, please. And they also hosted a collaboration workshop in Hanoi in Vietnam, and we needed to start working with other countries. So we've started, so this was a good way to meet stakeholders in Vietnam, and this has been very productive as well. Next slide, please. So all of this research management support and our own efforts to meet new people has basically meant that the project has been a springboard for other grant applications. So as an example, one of the new Thai groups that we met has now got a Newton Advanced Fellowship with me as the co-applicant in this, and this is a 3-year fellowship that brings in a lot of funding to work on aquaculture. We've also got a Royal Society International Collaboration Award started this year, that collaborates with Mahidol University again on aquaculture vaccines. And we've got other applications planned with Vietnam and Malaysia. I'm now a visiting professor in the University of Malaysia, Sabah. We're collaborating with several different institutes in Vietnam. So what I'm trying to say is the networking and the management of these programs is pretty complex, but it's crucial and it pays dividends. It means that we're in a perfect position to apply for other grant applications with some authority, if you see what I mean. We've got validation. We're already working with these, and we're sort of developing these new collaborations as offshoots of an already successful grant, and that's been a major factor as well. And that is all I've got to say. I hope I didn't run over time. And if there are any questions, I'd be very happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Colin, and thank you to all our 3 speakers. So we have a few questions, and I'm just going to start sort of passing the questions. Janaka, here's a question for you. As an international agency providing funding for Indian life science researchers, what has been your biggest challenge? For example, publicity, the quality or diversity of applicants. How do you see Indian institutions, grants and research managers working with you on such matters?
Thanks, Savita. I think what we've been able to do well, like Naresh was saying, nothing is without challenge. But I think what we've been able to do well, especially with UKRE, because of our presence on the ground in India, the British Council's presence on the ground in India, and because of the deep ties that we have with higher education institutions across the country, it's been and again, drawing on what Colin is saying, it's not an easy thing to do, because I think it means engagement and involvement at all levels. So I think those institutions that have been very successful in developing a a strong strand in the UK report have been those are the ones who've been very deeply engaged at all levels, right, at all stakeholder levels. But in terms of the British Council support that we do provide on the ground, there's a huge engagement strategy, a large engagement strategy in terms of how we engage with stakeholders. It's not just coming together when there's something to share, but consistently building that stakeholder engagement, I think, has been one of the positives. The challenges, I think, have been around when we have too many. Obviously, there's a limited pot, and then you have too many applicants. Then I think, that whole process is always challenging. But having said that, I think so far we've been able to, like I said, I think 25,000 academic partnerships, which I think is a really good thing. And we're particularly happy about how stakeholders have managed to engage with each other. And sometimes, most often, if you see it, it might have started as an individual collaboration, and then sort of, it gets institutionalized, if you will. So I think that's what's been the successful part of at least what has happened with UKRI. And I think in terms of the fields of application,
I think we are losing signal.
Are you able to hear me now? I can see everyone and I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you, Janaka.
All right, sure. So I think in terms of the journey that especially with a program like UKRI, I think we've seen it grow from strength to strength. And in terms of the fields of applications, it's gotten very, very tech and sort of also what's very topical and of current interest and strategic importance.
I think there's a signal problem.
I was told
we can hear her well. Go ahead, please, Janaka.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's the sort of a quick response to that question. But yes, it's not without challenges. But I think in terms of what we've been able to do well, I think is by building those strong stakeholder engagements. I think we've been able to pull off a reasonably successful program for the last 10 or 15 years. Yes.
Thank you, Janaka. Colin, there's a question. What are the key attributes that one should keep in mind while establishing and nurturing international partnerships? What would you like to say to that?
I think the main thing is to get to know each other. And this is pretty tricky because there are cultural differences there between countries, and even between the Southeast Asian countries we've worked with, there are very different cultural attributes. So the main thing is to actually meet each other in person and get to know each other. And of course, this is expensive. It's not trivial to go to Hanoi all the time and Bangkok, but equally getting to know each other by email or video conferences, you don't really mesh and get to understand the issue. So I think applying for travel grants to just get out there and talk to people and meet them is the main thing I've learned.
Thank you. Naresh, would you have anything to say to that? In your mind, what should institutions keep in mind while nurturing partnerships?
I think Colin has hit the nail on the head. So meeting personally and interacting between the scientists as well as whether it is administration, I think is very important to it. So even at ISA, we always try to host delegations. We invite scientists over so that there is a proper one-to-one interaction among the stakeholders, whether it is a 2-day seminar or a 1-day seminar or a conference. We apply to British Council the Researcher Links workshop, just so that we can bring different stakeholders at one platform and promote the interaction. That is the key for developing that trust factor, getting to know each other, understanding each other, whether two parties they can work together with each other or not.
Savita, if you don't mind, I'd just like to add, I think building that whole ability and trust, right? I think that is so important for projects to be sustainable and also I think to get the best out of both parties, if you will. I think that first step and investment, like both Colin and Naresh were saying, that consistent communication, keeping those channels of communication open and consistent, I think also sort of, and then even if you don't meet that often, it's fine, because you kind of, you know, are so comfortable with each other that then automatically, you know, the project sort of goes forward. But I think the initial investment of time, energy, and obviously, you know, funding is so important. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And we have another question here about, again, it's about how to approach potential international collaborators, perhaps from the point of view of the Indian researchers. They're wondering how they can approach international collaborators. Would the panelists have any thoughts on that? Colin, maybe would you have some thoughts on that?
This is really difficult because I think most academics get lots of scoping emails from prospective PhD students, postdocs, collaborators, etc. I would say try and meet the person if at all possible. I mean, and again, once they know you, once they recognize you, then an email is going to register more strongly. And above all, try and not just send a generic email saying, I'd like to work with you, I'm such and such a person, I've got experience, but try and make sure that it's more individual and tailored to what the person works on and what the person might be looking for to get their attention.
Naresh, there's a question from a graduate student. How can we foster international partnerships to benefit our PhD research and streamline a career in research?
From the student's perspective, I think again, one, they should have a proper clear communication with their mentor, because again, the mentor will have their own network globally with whom they might have worked earlier, or they might be collaborating in the current scenario. And apart from that, they should also have their own understanding. If during their PhD they want to enrich it and they want to further increase the scope of the project, having that discussion, doing some homework, identifying potential partners and discussing that with their mentor is the first and the foremost step. Then comes talking about funding and exploring the funding opportunities that can support them. In Indian scenario, I think DST runs quite a bit of travel grants and all where they can apply. In terms of Indo-US, the Indo-US Science Technology Forum runs a couple of fellowships. There are Fulbright fellowships where British Council runs these Newton Fund PhD placement programs. So these opportunities can then be tapped into and compete for the placement and getting the funds to explore if that works. So if the mentor already has existing partnerships and that can work, good. Otherwise, do the homework, identify potential labs, discuss with the mentor, approach these potential partners, make a case, have a tailor-made rather than a generic email that I want to carry out this particular experiment in your lab. And then approach and assess the situation, apply for funds, and I think it will work out.
And I think we have time to take one last question. So there are a couple of questions about government agencies, Government of India agencies facilitating international collaborations in research. All the government agencies do support international collaborative research. Naresh, would you like to say a few words about that?
Yes, I think the Government of India is quite making an effort now, and it's funding quite new schemes. So at the institutional level, the Spark or the Gyan, these are quite good schemes which are providing funding support to invite international faculty members to spend some time within the country, interacting with the students, interacting with the faculty over here. The Vajra in the domain of developing research collaborations and all. Apart from that, there are Indo-UK, Indo-US and other research funds available. If there are existing partnerships and you want to support and write a joint grant, then even that is also possible. DFG, DAD grant or DST, DFG grant and all. So there are quite a good number of funds which are available to support existing partnerships, as well as providing opportunities to explore and invite and give a platform to the faculty members to interact and explore potential partners.
Thank you very much. I think I'm afraid that's all we have time for today. Thanks a lot to all the three panelists for providing these three different views. And you heard Professor Colin Robinson speak about the support that he received from his research office in actually putting his grant proposal together for the GCRF grant. And do join us for the next edition of the IRMI webinar series, where we'll start looking at this process in a little bit more detail. Today's edition gave you some indication of the different kinds of perspectives that are needed for putting proposals together. And at the next edition, we'll go into a little bit more detail about the research management support that can help facilitate funding. So thank you very much to all of you for joining, and please do fill out the feedback forms at the end of the survey.
Thank you, Savita. Thank you, India
Thanks so
Alliance.
much, Savita.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Bye.